Welcome to MojoPlays, and a big how do you do to the Metroid Prime 4 trailer. At long last, we recently got it from the June 2024 Nintendo Direct, roughly 7 whole years after its initial announcement. Within it lie tons of little details and hints at probably the most cinematic Metroid game thus far, which inspired us to collect the best, wackiest, and most thought-provoking Metroid theories and info from across the series. In some ways, Nintendo made it pretty easy on us. There's a lot of Metroid plot purely up to interpretation at this point, and whether or not a certain Metroid manga is canon. Today, let's look over what fans have put together and whether any of it will be revealed in Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Prime 4's Black Hole. Right out of the gate, the upcoming Metroid Prime 4 Beyond will likely incorporate black holes, wormholes, or time travel in its story. The logo itself bears resemblance to a black hole, and we see some sort of portal during a minor gameplay segment in Beyond's trailer. This seems to be continuing the theme of referencing gameplay mechanics in the game's subtitle, since Prime 2 Echoes was about the Echo World, and Prime 3 Corruption was about the Phazon corrupting the world and its creatures. Kraid raised in captivity. During one of the most badass scenes in all of Metroid thus far, former boss Kraid, who is thought to be killed in an interplanetary explosion, mysteriously appears in his own mini-prison on planet ZDR. Exactly how this is possible was teased by the devs themselves, after they stated you'll fight a, quote, monster that appears to be Kraid, end quote. This Kraid is chained to a wall of a relatively small room, and his presence makes a lot more sense under the lens that this Kraid was raised here instead of brought in. A clone, most likely. The bubbling purple infection on his belly spikes, gross, could be an example of him being raised in poor living conditions. That and the hostility he shows to Samus could be because of her Chozo attire, or that he's generally gone a bit feral in here. R.I.P. Kraid. X have escaped. Being nearly all but confirmed, during the end segment of Metroid Dread, we see idling spaceships in the background prior to reaching Ravenbeak's floating base. During the escape sequence, however, the ships appear missing, with the likely culprit being the X-infected Mach-In that Ravenbeak had previously sealed away in the facility. It would appear the X have escaped Samus yet again, and now that the parasite has a set of wings, whatever title comes after Dread may show them popping up anywhere they want across the galaxy. The X absorbs memories. We all know the X parasites perfectly mimic and recreate a host's DNA, body, and abilities as seen with the SA-X, but it's also possible they absorb everything else, like their memories. As an interesting tidbit, the SA-X uses Samus's own tactics against her. It will first freeze beam before blasting you with a missile, just like how Samus used to kill Metroids in previous adventures with this exact method. It's for this reason perhaps the wisdom and personality traits of Quiet Robe were able to be carried through to his infected form, thus sacrificing himself during the end moments of Metroid Dread. Either this particular X cared enough for Samus to revert her suit for her, or it gained enough knowledge by possessing this Chozo to learn that other X would be too dangerous to be kept alive. The Chozo language. It is entirely possible to speak and write Chozo, thanks to some extremely dedicated fans passionate about conlang. Found and cataloged by the Chozo course team, Dread features a feature-complete language to be deciphered. 3 characters speak it aloud, and we get a much more complete sentence structure by looking at things like the loading screen or the text of various locations across the game. This latest form features triangular letters, however the square-lettered version of the past titles has no actual meaning. Fun fact, Chozo is comparably written like English, but spoken with a tone like Spanish, and you can go learn it right now. Federation Force got fired. During the gameplay of Federation Force, a title where you play as a super-suited galactic marine, the Federation has to call in Samus herself to defeat one of the major bosses. The fan belief is that the Federation felt if she was still necessary after funding this team of mecha soldiers, she probably remained the best option for hire, and the Federation Force may have been shut down or lost funding. We never hear of them after this title despite the Federation being ever present, and since their Project Golem suits needed constant upgrades and power-ups, as was a feature of gameplay, it would have become apparent that it was too costly a program to keep going. The Galactic Federation cloned Samus. Here's a popular one, mostly brought about to explain the personality shift of Samus within Metroid Other M, but this theory has popped up a few other times too. Most notable during the introduction to Samus at the beginning of Other M, we see her as a literal baby floating in space as she awakens in a very sterile lab under observation by Federation scientists. They proceed to remind her of all her basic mechanics and combat ability, while reminiscing on recent memories of the events of Super Metroid. Memories some like to believe have been planted, shortly before receiving the distress signal she claims was, quote, made for her. The bosses present in Other M are largely similar to Fusion, where the X-infected Samus is currently dispatching them aboard the Federation's Biospace Lab. It's possible the events are happening close to the same time, Samus having recently gone under the needle within the events of Fusion to implant her with Metroid DNA. Who's to say they didn't take a little for themselves to test run her clone aboard Other M's bottle ship? It wouldn't be the craziest thing to happen since the Federation has been able to clone all sorts of creatures like Ridley and the Metroids. Plus we see in Fusion that the feds have downloaded enough data about her suit that they're able to recreate her power-ups. On the flip side, yes, there's more to this theory, based on visuals and dialogue snippets, some believe the android MB, also known as Melissa Bergman, could be a modified clone of Samus. The Galactic Federation scientists admit MB was modeled into human form in an attempt to act as a mother figure to their homemade Metroids, having been inspired from the record of the baby Metroid imprinting on Samus. MB and Samus share the same eye color, hair color, and general appearance, so all we're missing is the little detail on how exactly her body was constructed. And finally, maybe Psylux is a Samus clone. This one is loosey-goosey, since Psylux is a rival bounty hunter we currently know nothing about, other than they will be an upcoming antagonist in Metroid Beyond, and an evil form of Samus is sort of a staple now. Fusion's Ridley Husk. A popular theory is that Ridley's body, having been drained by the Queen Metroid and Other M, is the very same one that was taken to the research facility in Metroid Fusion. Being that Fusion released far before, consider the fact that they chose to pose Ridley at the end of Other M in this specific hunched over position with mouth agape, similar to how the sprite appears in Fusion. The corpse model actually disappears during the escape sequence too, hinting that he may have been moved, retroactively making Fusion Ridley the feral clone that she accidentally helped over on the bottle ship. But what a cool reoccurring event, if intended. Who was Weevil? Weevil was another bounty hunter Samus fought in Metroid Prime Hunters that actually got a juicy little nugget of lore in his short backstory. Despite his current robotic form, he is explained to have been a former space pirate who fought against Samus in the past, having barely survived his encounter with her, ever since his brain survived in this mobile life support system, vowing to defeat Samus and claim ultimate power. Now, did we actually see his defeat in a game at some point? Well, maybe. He was most likely a Zebian, matching with his body type and relative intelligence. Some like to believe he was a notable enemy we blasted at some point, like the space pirate who carried the power bomb upgrade, or maybe the one that tried to stop her escape by throwing himself at her escape pod.
You took everything from me.
I don't even know who you are.
Origins of the X. The X-parasites were said to be native to planet SR388, however, being such successfully lethal predators as we've seen in several games, it wouldn't make much sense for SR to host any lifeform that wasn't possessed by X, and yet it does. There are various bugs, plants, and other goopy creatures that are not initially hunted by X, implying the parasite's appearance was a sudden and overwhelming one. One case could be that they were unearthed by the mining of Aeon, perhaps as some sort of trapped prehistoric creature. Or in a wilder case, the X were released by the planet itself, as a type of cell to remove infection, that being the Metroids, like the human body does. This wouldn't be the only living planet in Metroid either, as the living planet phase makes for the main antagonistic force behind all of the current Metroid Prime games. It's a bit suspicious, for instance, that the lava lowers within the depths of SR388 after the Metroids in the area are killed, almost like a living body biological ecosystem. Chozo statues are alive. Chozo statues exist to award Samus with various power-ups and help her grow stronger, and while some have been seen moving, it was largely believed they were mechanized in some way. One moment that challenges this idea, however, is that in Fusion, an X-parasite is able to mimic one, meaning it must have been able to extract its DNA in some fashion. The hostile statues are known as Chorizos, and they may be the result of some kind of bird magic, like a living enchanted golem, instead of a simple security statue like we had assumed. Chozo were inspired by wildlife. It's very possible that the Chozo based the various suits' abilities off of the local wildlife and creatures. They observed how the Dracora were able to build up speed and energy by running, or how the Edacoons wall jumped from platform to platform. When they took Samus in, who was in need of a protective suit, they put all their knowledge together so that later on she'd be able to use these same abilities. None of this is outright stated to be true, other than the creatures by happenstance showing Samus these techniques, but it makes a lot of sense, being that the Chozo came to Zebus as researchers, and it's less likely, but still possible, that they experimented on the friendly creatures first. Nintendo didn't believe in Metroid. Super Metroid was reportedly almost cancelled 3 separate times, both because Nintendo did not believe it would be a success so long after the first Metroid, almost a decade, and that Super for the time was one of their biggest game projects in terms of scale. Super went on to sell over 1 million copies and basically birth a new genre of gameplay, the Metroidvania. Despite this critical praise, some believe the low faith in the IP persists due to its limited number of titles and marketing presence. But with Prime 4 getting the big spotlight and possible availability on the Switch 2, it's looking like they've just been waiting for the right moments. Connected universe. It is altogether impossible to resist theorizing the many potential connected universes of Nintendo's worlds, especially because it's been done so well in Smash Bros, but also because the vastness of space implies that with enough distance, all these aliens could theoretically hang out at some point. F-Zero, most of all, shares the name of a major player in its lore, the Galactic Federation. Except in Captain Falcon's case, it's known as the Galactic Space Federation. Completely different, no relation, which is a real dang shame because the worlds could totally gel with just a bit of name tweaking. Meanwhile, the first Pikmin game makes explicit mention of the Nova Blasters used to defend against space pirates. That's pretty concrete, unless they're just talking about normal pirates in space in general, and as far as Kirby and Star Fox, maybe those planetary systems exist beyond the spaces where pirates are a constant threat. The paranormal within Metroid. Forms of magic, mystical, and paranormal happenings probably exist within Metroid. There have been Chozos that are so in tune with nature they can see into the future. The potential existence of ghosts, and the presence of psychic abilities like that of Mother Brain. You could argue Samus's ability to manifest her suit or not based on mental state is some sort of psychic connection. Space pirates aren't actually pirates. Maybe I'm too Halo-brained, but I thought this was all but confirmed. The group we know as space pirates are likely a collaborative effort of several alien races against the Federation. Commonly dubbing them as pirates is a way to refer to them as merely an enemy faction who's only capable of petty theft instead of a capable group with some sort of shared goal. They appear with diverse appearances, their own language, operate several entire planets, and have highly advanced ship and weapon building capabilities from the science they gather themselves. All this said, they are probably righteous in their own eyes, with goals far exceeding whatever propaganda the Federation sticks them with. Ridley indeed ate Samus's parents. This one is not much of a surprise to series veterans. It's commonly agreed upon that Ridley killed Samus's parents when she was young, hence her immense hatred for him and partial PTSD. However, it's never been explicitly shown or said in-game that he did single-handedly kill or eat her parents as shown in the Metroid manga. That was until Super Smash Bros., as the Ridley trophy that appears in Brawl specifically states the culprit behind the murder of Samus's parents. The connections with Samus run deep. Having been approved by Nintendo in some sense, along with supplementary material like Other M's trailer, it can be concluded that he did feast upon humans to heal himself. If only we could see him do that in games. That would be pretty messed up and very on character. Like imagine if he ate Mario in his Smash reveal trailer. Metroid created speedrunning. The various endings you can unlock at the end of Super Metroid is believed to have played a large part, or even birthed, the entire genre of speedrunning, which has exploded into a massive community scene. If you're able to complete the game fast enough, your end screen will change and provide you with a time score. But there are numerous ways and tricks a player can skip sections of the game to get this time much lower than you'd expect. Speedrunning events have not only been a fun way to engage with your favorite games, but also a huge blessing in the form of charity donations that raise thousands or sometimes even millions of dollars. Samus's age. If the Metroid manga is to be believed, which we've established it usually is, then Samus's age can be roughly calculated based on the several time jumps we see throughout the book. We see Samus joining the Galactic Federation as a soldier, making her at least 18 if human laws are still being followed. She is described as having a reputation already, meaning she'd have to have been there for a little while before going solo as a bounty hunter. This is also depicted in Metroid Other Realm. We see her describe herself as young and naive with short hair, then with ever so slightly longer hair in her Zero suit. We can chalk this up to her being around 20 when she decided to go solo. The manga then depicts a young girl she finds being around the ages of 6 to 10. She's at least much older than little Samus in Zero Mission, a time jump occurs, and it's shown the same young girl has now signed up for the Galactic Federation, meaning about 8 or more years have passed before Samus will start her mission in the first Metroid game. Altogether, this places Samus around 29 or her early 30s for most of her in-game appearances, and that feels about right to me. Samus is dead theory. Like all popular media franchises, is the main character dead? Questions start arising. In Metroid's case, there's been a few, like if Super Metroid is actually supposed to represent hell. Probably not. In the case of Fusion, however, we get a more plausible idea that Samus has been basically replaced in her own mind by a newer, more alien Samus. After being infected with X and saved by the Metroid vaccine, she awakes, saying, "One life ended, and a new began." Note, this line is different in the Japanese version, being that the X can replicate its host and possibly its memories, and that Samus's DNA is a genetic cocktail at this point. We don't know how much Samus is left, and she probably doesn't know either. That's all I have, thanks for watching. Leave your favorite theories in the comments below, I'm sure there's tons I missed. Leave a like or a subscribe if you're looking forward to Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, I know I am. Thanks very much, have a good day.